Didn't affect your play though, John, did it?
Well, John's.
That was a strange game. I lost every one of my tanks and none of my infantry.
Mhm. Is that what you talking N463?
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna cover those. We're gonna cover those tonight. That'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. So, how you guys doing?
Good.
Doing
How
great.
are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad. I feel a little better. So, yeah. These you guys, yours, and I think I would say Corey. I'm not sure. I think Corey was the only other submission for the N463. I think it's an interesting scenario. It develops some. It puts a question in how a player needs to attack something. Notwithstanding dice rolls and things like that. So it's it's got a couple little nice little slices of intrigue within it, and yeah, I don't think I've seen a German victory yet, to be honest with you, at least recorded. But I see them online all the time. But how do they win those scenarios? That's the question I'm asking. Okay, all the players I see, they're losing, and how did you win? Did the French set up behind the road or something? I don't know. It all depends on how they approach it. So but regardless, with that, let's go with the questions. I think a couple of you guys had some questions going on, and make sure that's going on right there. We might have some questions from some of the guys from, I think it was from 188. If maybe I think Mark G said
Well,
something about
this
that.
is Mark. If you're talking about the Zon game,
Right, right.
yeah. Well, I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that. I, for some reason, I can't click into Tactical Tuesday. I keep clicking in it, and it puts me in other rooms for some reason. I've never seen this before.
Um, that's weird. The capitalized room.
All right,
There you go.
I'm getting in now. All right,
There you go. All right, sweet.
gotta get out, get back in.
That's kind of wild. So,
But yeah, if you want, if we had a couple, Mark and I were enjoying that scenario. So if you wanted to talk through some of that stuff whenever, just let us know.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what we're starting with, so we don't have a problem.
Oh, okay, okay.
Don't
I
have a
saw
problem
you
with
had
that.
the this N463 up, so I didn't know if you
Yeah,
were
we can
gonna
boot it.
run.
We can boot it back up in just a bit. It's not a big deal. So if you want to pop up your game, and then we'll sync to you and
Okay.
Mark G, right? Mark G sync.
Yeah, yeah.
All
Well,
right.
let me get it up because I know Mark posted it. We weren't. I wasn't sure how this works. I wasn't sure if you bring it up or if we bring it up. So let me.
Well, but yeah, I could bring it up, but then you could toggle through the. I mean,
Yeah.
you could kind of toggle through the spots that you want to discuss. Since it's your
Okay.
question.
Got you.
So
And there was actually two things we were going to mention. The first one, Mark had a good point. I don't know if anybody's ever had an experience where you try to enter the board where there's a concealed unit sitting in the entry hex, but that we weren't positive from trying to read the rules how to handle that, and
okay.
we got some good answers from a bunch of people on Facebook. And then the other question uh, we wanted to just talk about was the routing paths, which is something I still struggle with. I'm embarrassed to say. So I thought there was a good kind of tactical kind of question on how the stack of units should best route to get to a certain hex. So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I don't
You
think
came
we've.
to the right place for that.
I was, I was gonna
yeah,
say I don't think we've covered routing before. What do you think, William?
yeah,
Not in the
Oh,
past 24 hours, no.
the past 24 hours. I guess maybe I was watching somebody last night and we've covered a little bit. All right, so let us know when you're up and going, Mark, and then we'll sync to you.
okay. Well, let me bring it up then. Mark, where'd you post that again? I'm sorry, I saw it and I don't remember where you posted it.
I mean, I think I've got the file. Download the file if you want me to pop it up. It's up to you.
Yeah, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
yeah, because I don't have it. I
Okay,
know it's out
let
there
me close
somewhere. I
this
don't.
game here. Give me 1 second, and I'll load that game
Thanks.
up. S. Oh, it's 188. It's in a different folder. Okay, gotcha.
Zon with the wind.
Yeah. Oops.
I was whining a lot about it as the Americans, but I have to admit it's a good game.
And that's the 2 turn 4. That's the most recent one. I think I just
Yes.
downloaded it 28
Yeah.
minutes ago. All right. My file is up and running. You guys can sync.
Okay.
Is this the? This is the end of turn 2. Is where the log starts. Is that where you wanted to start?
I think we can go through this, but the first thing, and I guess it's probably behind here, but just to say it, I don't know if this is a big deal to folks, or maybe people knew this, but if you're trying to enter, like Mark was pretty crafty, and he ran a half squat up to, I guess, T1 or S1 on the first or second turn as a German player, and it was concealed, and I tried to get in, and I was convinced he was just playing with me, and he was moving up some dummies to kind of cause some havoc, and it turned out that it was a real unit, and so we had trouble trying to figure out from the rule book what really happens. So I moved a half squad from the offboard into, I guess, T1, I think, or S1 is where it was.
Okay.
Yeah, and this doesn't show it now. It was like a turn or two before this, and so it was a real unit. And usually, of course, when you run into a concealed hex and there's a unit that you bounce back, and since it was off the map edge, we weren't sure if the American half squad was going to be destroyed or what happened. And it actually, I guess, it was a good question, because I think there's like 17 comments in Facebook about it. But the ruling was that you just bounce back and you can't get fired on as the American player who went in there. And then on the advance phase, the American, or the person that's off board, can advance in. And I guess the thing to remember is, a lot of times if you get bounced back off board, I think you have to enter the map. Otherwise, your unit, I think, gets eliminated. I'm not, if anybody knows differently, let me know. But
That is correct.
yeah,
And because you're moving to an offboard location, back
Yeah.
to an offboard location, there is no fire or line of sight to an offboard location.
right. Thanks for calling that out. So yeah, so that was kind of an interesting situation. Mark, don't let me monopolize this if you got anything to add. But
Well, the first question I had is kind of more of an etiquette question, if there is such a thing. So this scenario, you have 2 tranches of Americans entering reinforcements. You have turn 1 over here, and there was a sharp firefight there, but then the Germans have a movement turn, and what I did is I busted a half squad up here into this building, which generated the question that Mark just asked. The question is, from an etiquette standpoint, I went right up to the edge of the board and plunked a squad down. It's not taking up all the hex entries, but it's obviously an aggressive move tactically. But can you enter into the enter hexes in a situation like this? I didn't see anything that you couldn't. So, and clearly the Germans don't have enough units to block all the entrance hexes, but is that a right way to play?
Hey, you can play whatever way you want to. I mean, think of it this way. I mean, you have to take in the, and again, we're talking about Zom. We'll cover again this later. How many troops does the American have?
11.
They've got 11. Yeah,
They have 11.
11 squads.
How many troops do the Germans have?
5.
5.
A 4.67 and 4.447.
Right. So you're giving away
Cruise.
if you throw a half squad up there, right? Even if he stays concealed, and even if the American goes conservative, what's the easiest counter? What's the easiest counter for your concealed unit's move? I'm just going to take this guy here, and let's just say we go right there to R0. For whatever reason, I want to block your move into R0, and then the American decides not even to move on the board, but to advance on the board. What advantage did you gain over the American?
Well, you kept them, because the Americans have a time limit to get off the board, and so you held them off for, 1 turn's worth of movement.
Where do the Americans usually get to? Where do you anticipate with this sort of defensive setup, where you've got guys usually on first level to shoot them? I mean, which is a great setup, right? I mean, you want to shoot them at the grain fields. and the open ground and the woods, and there's a lot of shots that the Germans could take. Let's say you take two units. Okay. I guess clone doesn't work for some reason. Okay. They're not my concealment counters. I'm gonna take these guys over here. Let's just say this is what your setup was. You just want to block those hexes. Let's say I've got dummies, and then these are 2 half squads. So I'm using 20% of my force to throw them right there, and they're both half squads, right? They're not full squads; it's just half squads or dummies, right? That you could easily put dummies up there and say, well, I don't really want to come on there. I'll just kind of bypass them. It depends on your opponent. What's the advantage of this? Like you say, you might delay the Americans from coming on. Well, these hexes, to be honest with you, we're going to go over that in the scenario display. But let's get to the advanced phase. Let's say the Americans don't even want to bounce off of you, and I've got a question: do you actually even lose concealment if they bounce off of you, since the American doesn't have an LOS to you? That's my question. Unless there's a guy over here. Let's say this unit wants to bounce.
I think that the 9-2 stack was already on board when the American tried to enter the concealed stack.
Right, but
So-
does the 9-2 have line of sight to that unit?
Well, it was in this case it was this and this. So I think
Right.
for that we did. But
Right.
I get your point.
Yeah, because that's my question: is for you to lose concealment, you have to be in LOS to a good order. Known enemy, no whole 9 yards. He doesn't actually enter your hex. He's considered expending movement factors in this hex, which Pete says you can't even fire on the guy. You can't do anything.
A12.155 is actually pretty clear. It says the defender must immediately reveal at least 1 concealed unit in that location. So
Yeah.
you have to actually reveal a concealed unit.
Even though,
Prevent the movement.
okay, so that's strictly within the detection rules, not within loss of
Yes.
concealment.
Yeah, it's A12.15, which is within the concealment. It's under detection.
Right.
Okay, it's the second sentence. So it's very clear. It's not temporarily reveal. It must immediately reveal.
Right. I was wondering if something on the concealment loss gain table
Yeah.
goes into. We'll go into that later. But that's the concealment loss table is essentially the be all end all for the concealment rules, because to be honest with you, the rules actually don't even cover unless it's some specific situation like Pete says in detection and things like that. The concealment loss table is pretty much the rules that aren't in the rules. So if you read the concealment section, right, and all the other sections that mention concealment, you're still going to have to use the concealment chart to be able to determine loss of concealment. Get to know, rip out that concealment chart, peel it apart, try to understand. Don't ignore the paragraphs, and then read through the paragraphs and see what sort of specific instances apply for you to loss of concealment. And then as you learn the ways to lose and gain concealment, you can use it much more. It will become a weapon in your arsenal. And so I really encourage anyone that's going into ASL, you need to understand how to read this chart, how to interpret the chart, and how to understand all the conditions of the A, B, C, D through L. It's I mean, there is no other source that you're going to find all that information wrapped up into one. So and pretty much every single concealment question I've had, it's been answered just on the chart. So the rules, you could search the rules for hours, and sometimes you won't find out what you're looking for. But let's get back to the moment at hand. Okay, so we're taking a chance with the Germans to block the entryway, right? Let's say for whatever reason, I don't want them to get to these buildings here, and I think these are good spots to block it because this is open ground next to me. No problem. I have no problem with that. Okay,
Can
but
I just make a point?
yeah, absolutely.
Generally, and unfortunately I don't have the updated scenario card in front of me, but generally, a good rule of thumb in ASL is the only time you would place concealed units or units of any kind on the entry hexes on enterable locations on the board edge is when your opponent has a CVP cap, or they don't have the ability to either deploy, or they don't have a strong numerical MMC advantage. Because the first thing that most competent ASL players will do is they will have set their allowable deployed units to assault bump you, right? And then they'll send in a concealed unit in the in the advanced phase.
Yeah, we're getting there, Pete. We're getting there, Pete. Yeah.
But that's just that's one of the first tricks that I learnt the hard way.
Right. So you've got your blockage here, right? And again, you're talking etiquette, which is absolutely fine. I mean, it's a game. Are you allowed to move in that location? Sure. I mean, there's other etiquette that we can get into this game, but we won't. So how do you counter this? As the Americans, oh shit, this guy, he's got. I got nowhere to go. I'm just going to get hammered. Yada yada yada. Just like Pete says. Let's say when you see him do this, you move bump into here. They lose to the concealments, so he ends up with, I don't really care. Let me just say there's squads there for whatever reason, because I can't, those concealments are not mine. And so he bumped.
See if I can take them off.
Yeah, see if you can take those off. These might be dummies here. So
I can't take them. I don't know, Mark, if you can, but I can't.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyway, we bump, and this is the squad here. This is just an example. And again, you probably wouldn't want to put two squads up here, and I'm going to show you why. Because these guys will bump here, won't be able to fire on us. We're not TI, which means we could still advance in the advance phase. What are these other Americans that haven't moved? Like Pete said, they're still concealed. Right? So, in the advance phase, what do you do? I can't.
So you advance in with concealed units.
Yeah.
To get a kind of an ambush kind of.
Yeah.
Advantage.
Everybody advances in, even the 337 that bumped, and then this guy advances in, and they also get there. So what are we looking at? Let's say so worst case scenario for the Germans is this: they bump you, they come on with concealment, and the 337. Hell, the 337 come over here, whatever the case may be. Now in this hex here, under the concealment, let's say I don't control the concealments here. Well, I guess I did. I'm not sure why. It doesn't allow me to clone that, but it conceals this under my unit. What's the strangest damn thing in the world? That's weird. Anyway, this unit's concealed, right? And then the 9-2 is concealed as well. I can't clone that counter. So the ambush over here is going to be what for us as the Americans in the first stack. Remember, some of those components are concealed for the Americans. What's the ambush modifier there?
-1 to the roll.
Oh, revisit that.
Or -4.
Oh, -4. Oh,
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Right. So
leader, and -2 for concealed.
Okay, I was just thinking concealed, but
technically these are open ground hexes. Let's assume these are not open ground hexes. Let's assume they're non-open ground hexes over here. Because if they advance in there, they would lose their concealment. Let's say it's like this. Because these are all open ground hexes. So -4 dice roll here, you're going to be ambushed. I mean, pretty much straight up. And then in this case here, since he knows it's a full squad, he can commit units to move over there. Even if they were over here set up to enter this way. Like if Captain Crunch were over here, and for whatever reason, he only put a half squad here. Or, half squad here, and the 9-2 was over here for some reason. Right, and he bumps you here, and he goes back off board. This guy simply moves off board, 1, 2, concealed still, and this whole stack can come on.
Right.
And then you're going to have that giant ambush, potential, and you're going to be vanquished. I mean, that's just, you're just going to lose.
And let me just to say it too, Mark didn't set up on the entry hex. I think my first turn as the American player with the first turn reinforcements, Mark had a really good turn, and he blasted the crap out of me. And so I think he was just trying to continue the the initiative that he had to kind of get up there, because I didn't really have much that wasn't
Right.
broken on the over there, and I think that was his motivation. And let me ask one other question. So what happens if I had waited till the advance phase? If I would have waited till the advance phase instead of the movement phase to enter into the hex that had the concealed units, if there was a real unit there, wouldn't I eliminate myself? Because if I bounced on the in the advance phase, and I'd be stuck off board, and what would
No, the
happen to me?
advanced phase is the only phase you can actually enter
Ah,
a location occupied by an enemy unit.
okay, okay,
Right.
okay. Obviously, you're right. You're right. I see that
But the
for
other
close
thing
combat.
is
Good point.
the reason you don't do that is because you've allowed him to maintain concealment
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
ambush
yeah.
purposes.
Right.
Now, the
Well,
other reason you
yeah.
go in with the whole stack, including the unconcealed guys, is that if you if you are, if you A, get an ambush, and B, successfully prosecute the ambush, even the unconcealed guy gets to do that free advance afterwards. It's a great way of getting extra, making up for the fact you didn't enter until the advance turn.
I didn't know
Advance
that.
phase.
That's good. Thanks for calling out.
Right. And that's in the close combat excuse me, close combat section. It is not the people get it confused with the 212 roll. The 212 roll is a result of you being able to, essentially that's infiltration, or essentially you botched up or your opponent botched up. If you ambush them and you kill them, but yet you don't roll the 212, you still get the ability to exit the location, assuming your attacks eliminated your opponent.
Who
Okay.
doesn't roll 212? That's
Yeah,
all I've been seeing to roll.
It's all I've seen on Vassal. Some guys are rolling snake eyes, and then like the next roll's all 12. But back to the question. Let's say both parties. He doesn't bump. There's no push bump in this sort of situation here, right? And he just goes in the advanced phase. Both parties are concealed. So what are the modifiers at that point? Both parties are concealed right here. So do we lose concealment for entering this location? First of all, is that an open ground location?
No.
Okay, so both parties stay concealed. What are the modifiers in that ambush given these units? Both
Well,
are
I guess it's a cumulative -2 for the Americans because they have the leader, and the Germans don't have a leader, and they both get -2 for concealment.
right. So the concealment's a wash, and so the -2 here, the big boy here, is going to pretty much. I mean, that's an excellent chance of ambushing you, just with the -2. Even if he doesn't want to bump you for some reason. Let's say he was over here. All the Americans are over here, and he saw you move over here. Well, again, he gets to set up. So, but let's say he sets up. You guys play 2 weeks later, and he says, "Oh shit, I forgot there was a unit over here. I'm going to move these guys over here in the movement phase and the advance phase." Let's say he was out of movement factors, and then he can only advance phase there later. I mean, whatever thing happens, for whatever reason, he waits till the advance phase. The concealment's a wash. It's like nobody had concealment in the first place, and you get the -2 bonus here. And the worst part about it is who are you attacking? I mean, who's attacking you? The Americans are attacking you. You're all automatically going to be at a disadvantage in close combat. Automatically.
Because of the strength of the squads.
Yeah, you're going to be at 1 to 2 at best. At best. And he's usually going to be a 2 to 1. And even if he throws Captain Crunch in there, it's be 2 to 1 -1. That's 7 for a kill. I mean, it's pretty. That's like what the hell's that? What is that? A 36 chart? I think it's 36 chart. No, that's better. That's better than a 36 chart no modifiers. To be honest with you, is the effective roll of what that attack is. And then, even if he doesn't ambush you, in this particular scenario, like tactically, again, we're going to discuss that later. That's about 20% of your force, and the Americans, even though you got 88s, you could always roll 12s in those things. We all know that. And even if so, the Americans, essentially, the German infantry is not the problem in this scenario. They're not the problem, to be honest with you. It's the 88s. The 88s are the problem. If you don't have the 88s or anywhere close to that, the German infantry is going to be completely annihilated. They can't do anything about it. Minus the Vasalbot shredding everyone online. But again, we'll go into this in that particular situation later on. But yeah, you could move bump, cause them loss concealment, you would lose. Like again, I mean, if you're bumping, I guess. Again, I don't know how. I actually don't know how. So the defender loses concealment, right, Pete?
Yes.
So
The
the
defender, in order to prevent him from moving into that location, the defender must reveal a unit.
and I think the attacker has to reveal a unit as well, so as not to
He
qualify
loses
as a dummer.
Yeah,
Right.
He loses. Yeah. So it's the old assault bump thing.
Right.
It's a concealment loss activity for the attacker because he's attempted to move in to a known enemy, a real enemy's unit.
Right.
Movement phase.
But usually 99% of the time you need line of sight for that to occur. But because it's an off-board I think the detection rules force you, and the detection rules don't even care about line of sight. It just says you must reveal a unit to make sure that this isn't a dummy unit. Because otherwise, if I had let's say, for whatever reason, I don't know of any scenarios that do this, but there might be some, that if they gave you dummies off board, sort of like the Germans have dummies in this one, you couldn't move the dummies on, force him to lose concealment, and then bounce back keeping your concealment, because, I mean, what caused the loss of the concealment? Nothing. And so that's probably why the detection rule kind of circumvents the line of sight requirement, which is fine. It's not a big deal. I have no problem with that.
The last part of that sentence of the rule I quoted, the second sentence of A12.15, says you force the moving unit back to the last location occupied before entering the location that it tried to, where it, meaning the moving unit,
Right.
will lose concealment.
Yeah, regardless of line of sight. Yeah, regardless. It doesn't even say if it has line of sight to the unit, then it will lose it. It doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter. So that's where, yeah.
It's actually one of the most brilliantly crafted rules, precisely crafted rules in the game. Just on, and this is not specific to Zone with the Wind. This is just a general tactical thing. Sometimes you want to consider one of the things I always talk about is factor in who you're playing, the person you're playing, their psychology. Because sometimes, especially in any scenario where time is really limited, or time is critical, or objectives take time to obtain, especially exit scenarios or building control scenarios, sometimes baiting them into getting involved on the opening turn of delaying them from just moving, but getting them to bait them into doing that whole assault bump, advanced phase ambush with some of your half squads or your dummy stacks is worthwhile.
Yep.
It costs some time.
Right.
But generally, you'd only do that if you know you've got a guy who's always focused on destroying enemy units, and there are those players out there.
Yep, absolutely.
That's actually one of the biggest, not mistakes, or sort of errors in focus,
Shortcomings. Yeah.
Of a lot of new ASL players. They get so focused on destroying enemy units, they have lost sight of the victory conditions.
Right. Then we're going to get into destroying enemy units here in just 1 second.
Yeah.
Hey, Stu, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah, hey, I got a process or procedure question, I guess. When you go in and bump a concealed stack, say it's a stack's got a leader and a squad in it, does the defender in that case get to choose which unit to reveal, or is it forced random selection? Does he have to roll random selection?
It's a choice.
No, it's random selection, I believe, Pete.
No, random selection is not mentioned in A12.15 at all.
The last sentence, Pete. Check again.
Yeah, because the problem you run into is if let's say the leader gets exposed, right? Then the unit can actually enter that location as an infantry overrun on the leader, and so therefore the unit is then forced to reveal the MMC. Hopefully, it's their MMC in the location to prevent that from occurring. So I ran across that about a month and a half ago.
Yeah. If the only concealed last sentence. Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. I missed that. Random selection is used to determine which of multiple concealed units must lose their concealment.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example right there, guys, of just, if when in doubt, just access the rule book. Like Pete always says to me, it's a reference manual. Just if you have when in doubt, say, is it random select? Because there's lots of things that are random selection, some things that aren't. And snipers, random selection, but it's not. Sometimes it's not random selection. So just skim the rule. It's a small. Well, A12.15 isn't too small, but highlight the sections that are important, and then it will pop right back in, and it's much easier. I mean, not only new players don't know these rules, a lot of experienced players either don't know them or simply forget them, because a lot of times, there's only most of the time there's only one unit in there, so there's really no question. But it's a simple oversight. So go ahead, Tony. Sorry.
Choose, right? Well, yeah, I was going to say you can choose, but you have to anticipate then, right? I mean, and I'm trying to think of a circumstance where it would make a difference, and nothing comes immediately to mind to me. But I guess if a squad is running towards you and you anticipate he's going to bump you, right, to get you to lose concealment.
Oh,
you
right.
could always, as he gets to the hex next to you before he actually enters
Yeah.
your hex, you could
Just reveal
choose
somebody,
to reveal somebody at that point, right?
which
Make it
saves.
feel like there's a
Yeah.
tactical advantage.
Right.
Yeah, because you can reveal a concealed unit at any point.
Right.
That's an
Any
interesting
time.
tactic.
Yeah.
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 It's
Not after he declares the move, though, right? Once he
Right.
declares he's entering your hex, you can't.
Yeah, it's
do
too late.
anything immediately.
Yeah, it's too late.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely. I mean, if you've ever watched some of my games and someone's done that to me, you'll find I'm dropping concealment. If I've got a stack, which is unusual for me, I will usually reveal a half squad if I've got a half squad in the hex. Just take that immediate shot.
Right.
Well, the last thing.
Maintaining concealment or retaining concealment in ASL is one of the biggest assets as a defender, particularly. Sorry, as a defender, but also as an attacker, you've got.
Oh, definitely.
Right. I was just gonna say, for me, and I thought, as far as etiquette's concerned, I thought it was a gutsy move that Mark made, and it, I think, Pete, you mentioned a minute ago, like, know the psychology of the person. I'll tell you, it made me real nervous because I thought that someone else, maybe they're in the room here, had played this scenario and had like a little session where they were going over it, where, um, as the Americans, they got hammered pretty early because there were Germans in the entry areas, and it made it impossible for them to route. And that was kind of what my concern was, why I wanted to attack that dummy stack, or as it turned out, a half squad stack, because I was afraid if I left it there and I tried to ignore it, that with all the the power that the Germans have right when you're trying to get on the board, that I die to getting not being able to route. So I don't know if that's a consideration, but
I've been, but a few of my games lately, I've been burned by what I call poison pill half squads, which are stuff you leave behind in the backfield.
Mm-hmm.
Because they can cut route.
yeah.
Yep. And they will.
That's the big thing. I think Stu was watching a game between myself and my regular opponent John, and he saw me. I sent a sacrificial half squad round the flank, so that he was basically at 180 degrees behind a main lot of my opponent's forces, which were under artillery bombardment, and that was purely to stop them routing towards him.
Yeah.
So the only way they could either stay under the artillery, but they couldn't route east-west, for example. They could only route north-south, and they couldn't even route that because I'd pinned them into a corner of the map.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah.
Well, I thought it was effective.
Oh yeah.
And scary.
Yeah. You can. The scariest situation I've ever had in ASL is coming up against a really good player who basically started the whole assault half squad mass attack, but he used it with the Japanese. and he was really good with the Japanese. And it took me about 10 years just to get over the initial shock value whenever I played him, because he had the psychological edge over me before we even started. But there are players out there that I've played who I know cannot play a static defensive game and will attempt to counterattack. And you can draw them in and you set it up, and sure enough they'll counterattack even when it's detrimental to winning the game.
Yep, that is a good point. I have a long-term gaming partner who doesn't play ASL but other games, and he's fits that to a T. He can be outnumbered 10-1 and he'll still come at me. So kind of helps you to plan how to fight somebody like that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
The nastiest form of psychological warfare I ever had played on me was I'm a smoker, and in those days I was a heavy smoker, and my friend decided that he was going to stress me out so much during a game just to see how many cigarettes I would smoke.
Once you reach 6, Pete, it's over. You lose.
3 packs.
Oh God! Oh, cards counterattack, right? It was like five turns.
No, I think this was one of the Beyond Valor scenarios.
Oh, okay. Yeah, those others are a little longer anyway.
Yeah. It was a full day.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
All right. So,
yeah.
do we want to advance to the route? We want to advance to the routing thing. Yeah. Again, the psychological is half the game, easily half the game. So where's the?
And thanks for the discussion here. The routing thing was actually the main thing. This was kind of a tidbit, so I guess I don't know how long we'll go on the routing thing, but
No, we'll go. I mean, we just cover what's interesting and what's valuable. So
yeah, what it was this stack here on the American right flank. The Mark had another half squad that wasn't concealed, but he was kind of like I mentioned, a lot of these guys got hammered early on, and so this guy kept running away, and I couldn't get him routed, or I couldn't get him rallied, excuse me. And so if you can go until Lieutenant Buck is in this hex here,
yeah, absolutely.
Hex, what I was trying to do, my question was, once you get there, is I really wanted to get to this hex F2, because that seemed like the best chance with this maniac half squad chasing after me, and the other people hearing the guns in the background. And I wasn't really sure. I knew that the brush was concealment terrain. Might take a minute. Sorry, we didn't have it prepped for you, but
that's all right.
There you go. That's it. And so, and this is my ignorance with the routing still, is that I just wasn't sure if this was a valid route path to get over to here, because this German was here, so it was hard to kind of cut through this way, and then these guns up on level, I guess, 0, the same as what I was on, and so I knew I was concerned that they'd be able to kind of get at me as well. So I guess and I know, Stu, you might have been watching for a few minutes there, so I was just kind of flabbergasted on how I can get through there, and I still, even though I know you mentioned a few things before you had to go, but I still wasn't really sure I was understanding it.
Okay. Well, the first thing you have to realize is when you're in I-1, you have to determine the nearest cover in MF that you could reach legally, right? And there are certain things that obviously we know we can exclude. Well, since this is 2 hexes away from this gentleman here, or the location here, that is a valid destination. Your guns are over here. This one probably may or may not have a line of sight to I-1. At this point, it doesn't matter too much. And this one probably has a block. And
just to say it, at the time I was actually, I think I had retreated during a previous route phase, and so I think it was the next route,
the ensuing route phase.
Yeah, that where I was in H0, I guess is what that is, the half hex.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. That's when we were discussing. That's what I thought you were talking. I thought this was going to be a different route. So let's say so he'll advance here.
Yeah.
I think it's what the case may be. Somebody's got some background noise. I'm not sure who it is. MGT maybe.
Yep.
Okay. So we've got this situation here where actually I think I think he fired upon you. I think he re-DM'd you right here. So at this point,
that's right.
next turn This is the next route phase. You lost your DM. You didn't rally. He fires upon you
He
again.
fired at me in the advance phase and DM'd me.
Right.
And so it was the following. It was the route phase after the advance
Right.
phase.
So we're looking at the next route phase here. So the discussion ensued about where this unit can route to. Well, first of all, does he need to route? Right. That's the first question we need to ask ourselves. Is he required to route in this location from this location?
And I thought, the answer was no, I didn't have to, but I didn't want to keep getting shot, and eventually he was going to come up and close assault me or something. So I knew I had to try to get away so I could get used to the leader and the squad at some point before they became out of the game.
Right.
Since they're trying to get all the way down here.
Board edges put you in a very vulnerable position for routing units. The 237 can easily move down to H1, and you're in big trouble. That's all there is to it. You're just in big trouble. So essentially that's what it precipitates us to get the hell out of Dodge. So in that case, from the German perspective, if this unit were, let's say, was DM'd, right, from defensive fire, right, we may not want to prep fire on that guy after he loses his concealment. We might just want to move to H1. He'll get re-DM'd, and then he'll just be gone. Well, he'll essentially be conditions will occur to this unit. Essentially, the good chance be out of the fight. I won't even bother going into that. But if he doesn't prep fire on him,
J4 affecting him?
What's that?
How's J4 affecting him?
Well, which one is J? This
guy
guy here?
Right here. Yeah.
J4 is not affecting this guy right now at all.
Right.
So we're going to route here. So this guy's going to route. I'm going to ignore the leader because we don't really care about the leader here. Where's his destination is what we need to find out. Does he have a buildings or woods location within 6 MF that he can legally route to?
I guess that was my question because I was trying to get here.
Right. So F2 looks the obvious, right?
Yeah.
2, 4, 6, or 2, technically 2, 3, 4, 5 is the distance in MF. So 5 MF is the distance that this unit can travel, right? Because this unit is not adjacent here, we could take the open ground route as the shortest available MF. Otherwise, other things would occur. So is F2 a viable route location? Well, drawing a line of sight from P7 where there's a gun, that's blocked by a mile. And the other location, P9, that's also blocked by a mile. So guns can't see this guy right now, right? So first location we want to move to, how do you want to get there? And this might make all the difference in your ability to get to F2. If F2 is your destination that you want to get to. If you don't want to get there, you can decide to choose a different route. So let's say we want to get to F2. How do we choose to get to F2? Our purpose is I want a woods hex to try to rally next turn. Regardless of who can shoot on me, I want a woods hex. How do we get to F2?
Well, you have to move to G1 first because if you move to H1, then you won't have enough moving points to get through the gully and the crag to kind of get over there.
No, not at all. The gully's not going to come into play. So
I'm just saying. I guess what I'm saying is that you have to go to G1 first. I don't know that there's any other hex I can.
Well,
H1 will work. Right?
You can go to H1 here. So what happens when we go to H1? Because this is 2, going up the hill is 4, entering this location is 6.
I wasn't thinking about it that way, but I got you.
Yeah. So first of all, think: we can't go here? Can we go here? Is there anything preventing us from going to this location? Because we go 2, 4, 6. It's still reachable. You're just not taking the shortest route. But as long as it's reachable, you could take a longer route. This is taking a longer route. What happens when we reach H1?
Well, can't the guy in J4 see you? I don't know if the cliff side, hex side kind of blocks it, but
Now, the hex sides, the cliffs will never block line of sight along the hex side. That's a clear line of sight straight to that location. So now this unit, the known enemy unit, comes into play.
Right.
1, 2, 3, 4, and this is also 4 hexes from here. Now technically we can avoid that location because now it's not any further from here. So for all intents and purposes, we could just stop moving right there because even if that were an open ground location, we could just stop there because this is no longer getting further away from enemy units. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I would have went to G1 at first, and then to here, I'd say, oh no, now I'm closer. So then I'd have to ask for a redo.
Well, you could try that, right? Let's say for whatever, so you could go here, you could stop, because you can ignore this now because of this unit, this newly known unit, right? If this concealed unit were here, does that change any part of the equation? Let's say we have line of sight from here to here. Does this concealed unit have any part of the equation at this time?
No, it's concealed.
Right. It's not a known enemy unit. Got to be known. Let's say we pop here, and then this unit, so we can continue to move up here. What happens if we move up here? Because we want to get to that woods.
Yeah, now the guns can see, right?
Right. And the 237 can do what?
Interdiction?
Yeah, the 237 can interdict, and this gun here can interdict. This one cannot interdict because it would have to change its covered arc. So this one doesn't have to change its covered arc. Straight shot. That's interdiction. We're at 8 morale. Again, Americans can, and that's a key point in this particular scenario. Even if you're stuck in the open ground, if you cross open ground, what's your morale level? 8. So we take a little morale check, and hopefully dice spot's good to us. We roll the 7. We pretty much ignore it. And then we continue to our destination. So that's one way to get there. Let's go G1. We enter G1. What happens when we enter G1?
See the guns.
You see the guns. Again, you still see this one, and you still see this guy.
Yep.
Right? This guy, we moved out of LOS, but he's not known. It's not a part of the equation. Now, how does the equation change? Let's take it from this guy because he's closer. It's easier, generally easier to do from closer guys. Because big guys like this, pretty much like all these hexes are like the same distance. So it gets kind of wonky. So you got to count more. This is easier to work with. Since this guy is closer, let's just work with this guy. Now, talk to me about where he could route.
I guess I can't get F2 anymore because I'm 5 hexes away from him in G1 and F1. If I go to F1, but then F2, I'd be going closer to him.
Right.
So that was the problem I missed last night. I don't know why it went over my head.
All right, so where can we go now? Let's say, okay, we can't reach our destination. What happens now?
Well, I guess you can still go into H1, right? Can you go all the way over there? Okay.
We don't have to go here. Why? We don't have to consider this. Why?
I'm not sure.
Can't reach it.
Can't reach it within 6 MF, and we only have 5 left. Or technically, we only have 4 left.
Right.
So can't reach this. I don't. So this is not quote rally terrain. Can't go back here because we saw this guy. Even if we moved out of his line of sight, this is now a non-destination. Where can we go? And where we?
Can you go back H1 because if then you'll be going closer to the half squad and J0.
H1. Nope.
Like the crag, so you can't go there because then you're going closer. So then.
Right, we're going closer to him, and we're going closer to him and the gun.
Right.
So where can we go at that point? Remember,
Can you go to F0 and get out of this guy's line of sight?
Yeah, we have to choose a destination. The destination we choose, can be that location. Even if it's open ground, we can stop there because we didn't start the route phase in open ground, but we can end the route phase in open ground. So technically, we could stop there and be done. But we wanted to get away from this guy from DMing us all the time, right? What's the easiest way to do that? Get out of his range, right? That's going to be 1 firepower. He's going to be going through stuff. So what destination do we choose, gentlemen? Let's say we don't want to end up here. Where can we go?
Like
We have
C1 maybe?
We have 4 movement factors left.
Go to F0, E1, and then either D1 or D0 and C1.
Any other destinations we could choose other than C1?
E2.
E2. Any other destinations other than E2?
The reason I would choose E2 is because it's behind the woods.
Right.
And which covers you from the guns.
Right.
Right.
But are there any other destinations we can choose for this unit with 4 movement factors remaining? Because we can't go to F2 anymore. You guys need to see this. This needs to be crystal clear.
Yeah.
We can't go here anymore. This is now need a legal hex for us to route to. We cannot go to that hex. We have to choose another destination.
You go to E3.
Yep. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can go to any location you can get to that is not getting closer to this unit or these other units that you have line of sight or the unit that was line of sight. You can go anywhere from here, 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 and here. Any of those locations you can choose as your destination. Say, I want to go to D1. I want to end up in D1. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5.
And you don't suffer interdiction as long as you're not within.
Why don't we suffer interdiction when we go to F0?
Because you got hindrances.
Flush.
Yeah, it's not considered open ground to this unit.
Okay.
If we had a German unit over, let's say we had this 447 over here, do we suffer interdiction in that location? We're not getting closer to him, right? Because that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is also 5 hexes. So we could technically route there if we wanted to for whatever reason. So do we suffer interdiction from the 447 and B3?
No.
Why not, Pete?
Because at any time your firepower is modified either with a positive DRM or halving, you are or you're outside your normal range, i.e. half.
Right.
You cannot be interdicted.
Range of this unit is 4. That is 5 hexes. If all these were open ground, we could keep running 5 hexes. And the same reason why the 237. Once we get out of 3 hexes, we just run through open ground and we're fine from this unit. This unit only stops us from going towards him. It will have no impact on this location here in terms of interdiction. Now, obviously, he could shoot at us with 2 flat next turn and DM us, which is what the problem we have. But we're a little bit more than a movement phase away from this guy, And does this guy want to go up here and stop us from moving? He'd have to CX get there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to kind of pin us against the wall. Does he want to go there? Maybe. I don't know. It's up to the German at that point.
I've never had interdiction with an 88. So would E3 get interdicted when it moves?
Yeah.
If you move there, E3 will get interdicted for what? Why would you get interdicted?
It's in the normal range.
This is the normal range. And ordnance's normal range is 16.
Thanks.
I've already counted the hexes. As soon as you move to G1, you're at 13 hexes.
Is this 12?
That's 12. So that's 12. So you can't actually go to E2.
Yeah, so we can go to D2 instead.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. E2 being behind the woods seems to be the best of a bad situation.
Right.
One of the reasons,
So in the original situation, moving to H1 is the optimal so that he could get to F2 back in the original.
If he wants to get to O2, that's the only direction he can go to get to F2. This turn. This also gives him the option just to stay where he is.
I have to take interdiction, but I could get there. That's the thing.
Right.
The interdiction.
Right. You can go interdiction here and then here. But
yeah, but Mark,
I would take the interdiction and go through G2 because the next one you're going to be exceptionally vulnerable.
Yeah.
To the half squad.
Yeah.
And I think Mark had a good point because he was my opponent.
Yeah, Mark, you wanted to take the 8-1 with you, and I think the reason why you didn't go through G2 and interdiction, and Stu was on the line then, is you fail interdiction, that 8-1's gone.
Yes, that's a good.
Yeah.
That's a
That's
good
brutal.
point. Thanks for bringing that up. That was another thing I was unaware of until you pointed it out. I think Mark, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, he's a good opponent. You got to play this guy.
Yeah. So if the leader, let's say the leader doesn't go with them, leader stays here. Leader doesn't go with them because we don't want to lose the leader.
Yeah.
And remember, we're Americans, dude. We're broken Americans. What's our morale? Our morale is the best in the game other than the SS.
Yeah. 8.
If you can't roll an 8, even an 8 only pins you. So let's say you roll 8, you get stuck here. That's like I don't even know what percentage chance it is. I have it up here somewhere in dice. Here it is. Nope, not in there. It is dice probabilities. Roll 8, 72% chance of us not dying when we're interdicting with the Americans. If we have a 7 morale unit, it's a 58% chance. So we lose like almost 14%. And if we have a 6 morale unit, which essentially like is a broken half squad, we have a 41% chance of living. So we have a 60% chance of dying. So 8.
You're giving one victory point to your opponent. One CVP with 6 morale troops if you risk infiltration.
Right. Right. Now the Americans can't afford to lose. It's a victory point game for the Americans. The Germans can afford to lose units, and in some cases might want to lose them.
Well, and that 8-1 leader is 2 victory points right there.
Right.
For exit purposes.
But let's say we don't want to risk the 8-0 leader, the 8-1 leader over here when this is our turn. Let's say he defensive fires. Remember, makes a big difference. He defensive fires against us. He DMs us. We route this way. We take interdiction. We get fine, or we stay there. Whatever. German turn 3 comes up. What's the 2-3-7 going to do in his turn? With this setup that you see here, the Americans don't move anybody else. What's the
Go after the 8-1. That's what
Yeah.
I would do.
assault move advanced phase 2-1 close combat? More than likely he's going to die. Leader can't use his leadership modifier to affect his own rolls. That's a 7 for a CR. Does it tie the 2-3-7 up? Yep. But again, like Pete said, that's 1 point. This is 2 points.
Well, maybe that is the motivation then for you to bring your 8-1 leader and risk the interdiction, because if you don't, you're risking that close combat the next turn.
If it's your move, and if you're the moving player, if it's your turn, your player turn, then all you do is you just advance the 8-1 into G1.
Right. Or further.
Right.
Or further, right? Or you just, you move the backside to get to this location. Again, it all depends on whose turn it is. If you don't want to risk the leader interdiction here and the potentiality at the beginning of your turn, then you simply let him rally that way. And you have a leader here that could possibly join up with here. If you're moving next turn, that's 2, 4, 6. And then advance phase into J3, that's a distinct possibility if that's what you want to do, because what happens when this DM's gone? Right? Let's say we move over here and then we advance. Screw this guy. We lose DM at the beginning of the American player turn. He didn't rally. German player turn comes. Where's this 2-3-7 going to go? Is he going to pursue this unit here? The only thing he's really going to do is DM him. And what's he going to do? Just continue to route this way. If these guys aren't here, if these guys are still concealed, hell, if this is the situation, where's he going to route to now? Let's say he moves over here and then he fires 1+1, he gets a DM. If this is not closer, I think it's still closer. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A little bit further that way. Now it's outside the covered arc of this gun. These guys are concealed, possibly dummies. This guy, we'll know if these guys are dummies or not, right? Because if they're real units, that happens. They're going to engage in close combat. The ambush is like minus 3,000 or something like that because you're broken and the whole 9 yards.
I knew that they were dummies just because of the order of battle, plus that he wasn't. Yeah, he was just kind of sitting there. But yeah,
right. But at this point, once he reaches here, this 2-3-7 most likely can only re-DM him, and you need a 4 to rally him. He might be out of the game, might not. But if he comes over here, then we relieve the pressure on this unit, and instead, if he fires here, and the gun choose to fire up here at the hero or wherever, whatever other target you want to give him, maybe move a 3-3-7 in the open over here, make him swivel his gun or whatever and shoot, and then you have an 8 in the next American turn, and then he's up and going. And once he's up and going, he's just coming down the backside. And once he enters this valley, this gun can't see him. Not going to see him. He might see a sliver. No, he can't. Orchard right here is going to block all line of sight over here. Completely clear. Once this unit rallies, he's free to penetrate behind lines. This is a free run until you hit this location, unless the German moves other units. So, is it important to keep this guy DM'd? Or is it more important to move this 237 over here? The choice is yours as the defender. That's something that you have to take into consideration when you make this move up here. If I can't get these guys, what's his plan? Is he just going to come back? Not a problem. Why would this be a great solution? Because once these guys move up and they start breaking, because you got 8,000 firepower over here, where are they going to route? They're probably going to route to here, and now you got a little 237, causing problems. So he's done his job. He's created a route, split them up a little bit, and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. For all honesty, once the 237 goes here, and this unit starts doing this, what happens right here?
Start shooting at him.
It's long range. It's 1-2. He still kind of covers the road. He's in a stone building.
I
so
guess I was talking about the 88s, but
no, 88s can't hit the road.
okay,
Didn't
I
you
guess
in
you're
that
right.
valley?
Yeah, because of the building. You're
Yeah,
right.
the building, the orchard. I was thinking this one might have.
The woods.
Yeah.
The woods and the orchard.
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
this is
you're right,
tight.
you're
Kill line of sight.
That's
They
that's
kill line of sight.
yeah, it's very tight line of sight there, and that's one thing. That's one thing again with the valleys and the and other things like that. Once the game starts going a little bit more 3-dimensional, stuff like this. He could see me here, can't see me there. Can't see me there. This guy can, but he has other issues. But again, that's something else down the road. But yeah, the route over here, you guys need to see that. So once you're even if you're here or if you want to stay here, you could route freely this direction. Just because there's no building or woods, that doesn't mean your mind needs to freeze up. Your mind says, okay, can't reach here, fine, I go wherever the hell I want. It's as simple as that. I go wherever the hell I want that I can reach that's still not getting closer to enemy unit. It's the same routing rules. It's just that essentially what it does is it opens up all hexes that you could choose for your destination within your remaining MF, which would be 4 at this point. So it doesn't matter. You want to go here, that's fine. You want to go here, Now if you go here, right? Can we get to E2? Let's say we make it to E1, trying to get to E2. Is E2 a destination we could choose if we take this path?
With everything else being equal, I think from before, then yeah.
Can you? Because now you may have extended the range. Again, this is long range. Let's say that's 15 hexes. This is probably going to be 14 hexes at this angle to this unit. And so therefore you couldn't get to this location if you went this way, then that way. You probably just have to go 2, 3. And which is fine because he can't interdict you here anyway. So be careful with that though. If you say, hey, okay, I'm going to route up here and go around here for whatever reason, don't worry about it. As long as you're not in open ground, just run through the bush and then make it here and you're safe. Once you cut up here, you're probably going to be screwed because this definitely is extending the range to this unit here. And F1 is definitely going to be closer. So once you make that move, now you've excluded this hex. Now, of course, D1's just as fine, right?
Yeah, I
Right.
guess you're right.
You can go to D1, seeing that mistake, it's like, oh, okay.
Trees.
Right, and then you're essentially just using the trees. Whether you use it there or the whole way back to C1, doesn't matter. This might be a little bit extreme, but again, you might use this unit if you're safe enough, and you're going to move your 8-1 out of 0. Maybe he's one of the aggressive guy that Pete described earlier. Okay, I'm going to kill that son bitch no matter what. 1 bypass, 2, 3, 4, CX 5, 6. Right? That's going to cause a problem for you. But now this unit is behind the gully. It's going to make him difficult to get back in the battle. All the units in the valley can't see him anymore and therefore can route in that direction towards the 237 because he's on a plateau effect. So he's no longer cutting any route paths. And, well, this guy's going to rally in the next American rally phase anyway. And then if he wants...
But I couldn't rally that DM guy just to say, because I thought even though it was a non-unknown unit with the concealment guys, I thought I had to keep the DM marker on him the whole time.
Nope. This is gone.
Okay, well I screwed that up then.
That's okay. That's okay. That's just part of learning. It's all just part of learning the game. and you could stay there forever, and he could just sit there. Nothing happens. But if this was a real unit, no DM, because it's not known. And if it's a real unit, he would still probably advance into close combat. And then as soon as he attacks you, if he attacks you and this unit's over here, let's say this unit's over here, nobody's in line of sight, he doesn't lose concealment, even if he attacks you.
Just as an aside, I learned I don't play goalies much, and I learned that it takes double movement factors to move out of a goalie, and it takes 2 to move out of it. So it's like you got a CX to get into these woods.
Yeah, it's like you're going uphill. The goalie's essentially going from here to here. You're just going uphill, and that's 2 doubled 4. And this is 4 to go into because gully is 2 plus the other terrain hex, so it's 4. It's very these 2 hexes are very slow, but again, if you're CXing over here, is there anyone to shoot at? And if there is, you're a CX 747. What's your firepower? Let's say this guy's right here, and you, for whatever reason, you went 2, 6. That's going to be an 8 plus 2, the advanced fire phase. That's a damn good shot. The reverse is not true. Is not necessarily true. That'll be a 4. That'll be a 4 plus 2. Obviously, 2 columns worse. So again, your troops dictate what you might or might not want to do. You might want to sit here, and then hell, at that point, you might, if you could advance over here. If you're the 447, you might want to advance over there, so he doesn't blast you point blank, or whatever. That's tactical. Again, whatever you want to do. If you want to bait a shot here so other units can move, that's what you're doing. Because you could route freely, he can't do anything about you routing backwards. If you broke here, and then we'll continue if unless you have a question. Let's say you break here. Where's your route destination? Since we're talking about gullies, we break here. So oh shit, we're adjacent to an enemy unit. We got to get the hell out of Dodge. Where are we going? And this is exactly the game situation. Where are you going?
As the German player, where would I go?
J4.
You dirty rat. You know too much. How do you determine J4 instead of G5?
Well, I don't want to move down the gully or across it again.
Well, no. How did you determine it? I don't care whether you wanted to move down the gully. You might have to move down the gully.
Well, it would be 2 and then double to get out plus 2 to get out, so I don't have enough movement factors.
No. It's 2 to move the gully. This is 2. Well, what's our potential destination hexes? J4 and G5, right? You've got K4, but obviously J4 is in between it. Can't go here. There's a building over here. That's potential. This is always, it's technically not, it is further away from that guy. You could technically go, if you had the movement factors to get up there, 2, 3, 4, 5. You do have them 2, 3, 4. Yeah, you do have.
It was just a flash in my head, and I said
right.
it, so I guess that's about it.
No. There's no flashes.
I think J4 is the right one though. Yeah.
Let's.
I forgot that the American 8-1 he can't see, or the DM unit can't see him, so that's why he can go into J4.
Right. Let me grab some of the hexes here. Let's go with I'm gonna copy one of these. All right. This is our little route to work. What's within 6 movement factors? We're just gonna label them all. This is important because this is gullies, and a lot of people like to do a lot of funky things. And if you guys watch the Nishimi Bashari Highway, gullies came into play in determining whether you can route, because they take a chunk of movement factors. What's within 6 movement factors of this unit?
H4.
H4.
Does this cost 4 to move in H4 and 2 to
Well,
move in H4?
building or woods. Let's look for building or woods,
Okay,
right? Building woods has to be a priority. J8. All right. How many movement factors is J8?
1, 2, 3,
5.
6.
Okay.
Yeah,
6.
you're coming out of the gully. Yep.
All right. Yep. 6 coming out of the gully is going to double that first one, like you're going uphill. So H6 is going to be 2 movement factors. 3, 4, 5, 6. Technically, we can't go here. Why? If you've read the surrender rules. This is within 6 movement factors. Why can we not go there as a destination? This is something you probably won't know. Because it's the it's the prison rules. If you the route rules.
If you can't low crawl, if you only can
adjacent. Yeah.
Being
if you're
adjacent is the
to
key.
somebody, if you're adjacent to somebody and you can't get into cover, and the only thing you can do is low crawl, then you become a prisoner.
Yeah, pretty much, or subject to interdiction. So we are adjacent to this guy. That's the key. If we started, let's say he were somewhere, he were here. Well, we're still adjacent. Doesn't matter. We're adjacent. So if we can be interdicted to our destination, and that's the only way to get to our destination, regardless of where we can be interdicted, which will be interdicted way over here, we surrender to him. Even though, let's say that's our only location.
So you really can't go to J8 then.
We can't go to J8, but it is 6 movement factors away. What else can we go? Are we looking at? So that we were excluding J8.
Why not F7?
F7. How far is F7?
5.
How'd you calculate 5?
2 to get into H6, and then G7 would be 3, and then F7 would be 4, 5.
Right. 5 MF here. Okay. Not a bad spot. No interdiction. No interdiction. Safe and sound. Okay. Any other locations? What about G5? How much to G5? Oops. That shouldn't have occurred.
That'd be 6, wouldn't it be? Because it'd be 2 to get into H5, and then 2 doubled to get into G5. So would that be 6?
Yep. 2 MF to enter woods, doubled because you're going uphill. 6 movement factors there. Okay, what else? J4. How far is J4?
4. 2 for I5 and then 2 for J4.
Are there any other destinations closer than 6 MF? Anything else? This one is 6 MF, but we can't go there.
K8, but you can't get there.
Right, K8 can't get there. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, that's adjacent, right?
Yeah.
And so,
why are you allowed to enter J5?
Why aren't I allowed to enter J5? Is that
to a known unit already?
No.
Yeah, you are already adjacent to a unit that we see in line of sight. We can't move adjacent.
Right,
that will be illegal
so
because
there's
of
no
this.
way to get to J4 then, right?
No. How do we get to J4?
Through I5.
We go to I5.
Oh, okay.
Once you go to I5, I didn't see that at first either, but I guess with the woods, you're kind of, they can't see you as soon as you get out of the gully.
2 here, right? Now, if this was open ground and this was open ground, that was just a open ground gully, couldn't go that way because then we'd be interdicted. The exact same reason I8 screws up J8. So this is 4 MF, 6 MF, 5 MF. Now this one looks weird, right? That's 3 hex. This is the furthest away, but yet it's 5 MF, which is closer than this, but not closer than that. So 2.
Stu, can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, how about G5? I'm curious about how the terrain works because that hex has brush and woods in it, doesn't it? So
Right.
would you have to pay for both of those?
You do not. The terrain, there is no brush woods hex. However, fire between these 2 units here is affected by the brush. Fire between this unit and this unit would be affected by brush because it's on both sides of the thread.
So you would not pay, if you were not, say you're not earning that from the gully, just from G4 to G5, you wouldn't pay 4 movement factors. You wouldn't pay 2 for the woods and 2 for the brush. Then you would pay just 2 for the woods.
It's a woods hex. Yes, you would just pay 2 for the woods. Now, if you wanted to bypass G4 to get to G6, how many movement factors would you expend? I'm right here, and I want to bypass. Let me leave this guy here. Let me clone him. If you're in G4 and you want to get to G6, because that's a good spot to be, you want to be in crest status in G6 at the end of the turn. How do we get there if we want to bypass? Let's say we want to bypass, and it's safe to do so, or whatever. We won't take any other considerations in play. We're bypassing G5. First of all, which hex sides only can we bypass?
Yeah, I guess the H4 and H5.
H4, H5 hex sides. These right here. Boom, boom. Okay. So we're entering the other location in the hex. What is that terrain? What is the
I
terrain?
guess you have to pass through the brush, huh?
Right. So how much would we expend in bypassing that hex?
2.
2. And it might expose you to fire on this side. Let's say, okay, Stu, what the hell is the difference? If I want to go here and then go in there, what's the difference? Why would I want to bypass? Why would you want to bypass, gentlemen, instead of entering that location in this instance? And this is the strength of bypassing.
Well, if you don't
avoid a shot from the other side.
Avoid a shot from the other side.
You don't know the dummies, and they could
Yeah.
defensive fire on you in G5.
Yeah, let's say we got a 237 here, 467, or somebody that could shoot into G5, but we don't think that he has line of sight to the hex spine. Again, it's considered open. This one is considered open ground. Again, you're taking it to the hex spine, so that's going to cost you 2. But if he could see G5, you might avoid that, especially if it's something like, like this. I mean, that might be in line of sight. It's pretty close. That could be up to a 6 or 8 even on you right there. We want to avoid that completely. We're expending 2, and then we're going 4 into the gully.
What if somebody fired at you from H6 and shows, say, the H5, H4, G5 vertex?
Open ground, right?
Line of sight. That would be okay. So you would not get the benefit of the brush.
Not get the benefit of the brush.
Be a -2.
Now look at the vertex here at F4, G5, F5. That vertex is brush. You're not in open ground on that specific vertex. Remember, you could draw line of sight.
You mean F4, F5, G5?
Yeah,
Okay.
you draw line of sight to that vertex right there. That's not an open ground location. However, drawn over here from the height of the elevation, that is, because it's open ground.
So why are you treating that hex different than you would treat, say, a hex that has a building and woods in it? The G5 hex, because it has brush. Because is there such thing that is a building woods hex? Is that a defined terrain type?
The problem is that's a for all intents and purposes a worthless rule. For all intents and purposes, I think there are only 2 hexes in 85 boards that actually have combined terrain.
Gotcha.
One is on board 2. One of them is on board 2. And again, when you look at the beginning of chapter B, read the beginning of chapter B before B1, right? B.1 to point, I think it goes .10.
I've always wondered about that example because it's like I never find it. I found it in one game, I think.
Right. Wow. It's to be honest with you, I mean, look at this board here. How many combined terrains do we have? Even the wheat field's separate from pretty much everything. Brush. You have a little bit of brush up here, but they describe it as being, part of the pretty painting and picture, stuff like that. But it does affect bypass. But that is a woods hex.
What about H4? Like if H3 to H4, you're still paying 4, aren't you? Because to move in there.
Right. Why is that? Because you're playing 2 for the gully and then the other terrain in the hex, which would be, if there's other than open ground, which would be the brush. So that'd be 4. Right. Very slow. So we can bypass that.
I interrupted your other example.
No, not at all. No. But I'm talking, just read the B1. There's a couple examples. It talks about hex sides being, overlapping hex sides. And it says, pretty much it negates this point. F2 it would negate the open ground. So if you want to bypass that side, it would be 2 going here. But if you enter the location, well, first of all, brush is in a TEM anyway, right? So if someone fired upon you in F2, they're not going to get any hindrance modifier because you're in the location. And let's say someone were in F1 and they were firing upon you, there's no hindrance between the target and the firer. You are still in that location. There's nothing between you. This is between. This is adjacent. This is not. There's nothing between these units.
Not like a wall or a hedge.
Not like a wall or hedge, and those have a whole 3 pages of specific rules for those. So even if you considered that, by virtue of application of the rest of the rule book, it wouldn't apply because it's not smoke, right? It's not inherent terrain, not whole 9 yards. It's not even orchard, whatever. It doesn't matter. Hindrances only apply between you unless it's like smoke and things like that. So even with just the general application, which is the strengths of the rule book, right? There's a lot of things that seem quirky as hell, but once you get in the nitty, essentially what I do when I have a confusing situation like this, you break it down to the basics. How do we define terrain? Is that a terrain feature or is that a hindrance? And then if, let's say it's a hindrance, TEM, like a brush woods, which it is, how does that apply if I were to fire on through the brush hex, through the brush side? Well, it wouldn't, because hindrances only apply between targets unless it's smoke. And it specifically states that. You'll eventually come around to that conclusion, even if it didn't have the description of hex sides and things like that, you would still come around to that conclusion. Now, if I4 fired upon G5, what would the modifier be? This is still considered, the brush is still considered level 1 obstruction. Or not obstruction, but a hindrance. We get the hindrance here, and then we get the TEM here. Even though you're kind of clipping the brush a little bit right there, doesn't matter. That brush isn't between the two targets. F4, H7, this hex side here, F5 and G5 is brush, and that's between your two targets. You know, the hex, the brush that we have in F4 doesn't matter, because if that were a hindrance, hindrances do not apply in the target location unless it's smoke. Or some other exceptions. There's always exceptions, gentlemen.
Yeah.
But that's the general rule. There could be SSRs off the yin yang. There could be a weird Pacific terrain feature, whatever. But hindrances, as a definition, you know, when do I apply the hindrances? You know.
I have a question.
Okay.
I'm probably not hearing right, but if somebody shot from here to here, then there's one for the woods, which is a terrain effect modifier, and one for the swamp, for the marsh.
That's a brush.
Oh, and one for the brush.
Why would the brush not apply?
So that would be a +2.
No. Why would the brush not apply? We just described that. The hindrances only apply between the target and the firer. Is there any brush hex between the? Is there any hindrance hex between the target and the firer?
Right. Okay. All right.
There physically is a hindrance there, but that's the problem. Don't remember, we're still depicting what's on the map. We still have to take, there's some generalizations of the map and things like that, right? Like this D9 right here, right? Where's the dot in D9? It's on level 1. Does that mean if you're in D9, you're in level 1? No, you're obviously in the gully, because the gully defines that whole hex as negative, as a depression hex. You're not at level 0 in D9 if you're in the gully, even though the dot is on the same basic logical application of the rules applies. Like, see the difference between D9 and B9? No difference in those hexes, except where the center dot is. And this was even on half open ground and half gully. So this one here, this is not level, you know, this is not open ground terrain. You're still in the gully, you know. So
can I ask you a question about back to your route example?
Yeah, we're getting here. We're gonna complete. We got derailed from here. So 4MF, we determined this one to go here, and then you're gonna ask your question real quick. This might answer it. So we have to go here, right? 2, 4. What happens when we enter this location? That was our destination. We're there. Right. Let's crack out the hot dogs. Oops. What the hell happens now?
Well, you can't get rid of your DM next turn because you're adjacent to
what?
Enemy unit.
Can we stay there?
No.
Are we done routing? We reached our destination. Are we done routing? That's the question.
Yeah.
What's the answer?
Yes.
No, you got to go to the crag, right?
Well, where are we going? The answer, the question comes up is, do we need to continue the route? Take one step at a time. Do we need to continue the route? If the answer is no, we're done. If the answer is yes, then we need to kind of reset. Just like we did up here.
You have to continue to route.
We have to
You can't
continue to
be
route.
adjacent to an enemy unit.
Right. All right. So we continue to route. What is our destination?
The
We-
Crag Hex looks like the only real viable option. I guess you can go to I4, but
What's within? We have 2 movement factors remaining. What destinations can we go to, gentlemen? This is important.
you go
Because this is how you die on this map. This is how you die in this location. You need to know where. Remember, just because we add gullies, when you start adding these terrain features in, you need to think a little bit more. Do I want to enter this gully location, or do I perhaps want to enter that gully location?
Craig looks like a flat 2 for entry, so that should be viable.
Right? So we have 2 movement factors here. Is there anywhere else we can go?
Go to I4.
Oh, 237's not here. He's up here. I4, is there anywhere else we can go?
can't you go? You
Yeah,
can't
it's
go back to
I5,
I5.
yeah.
Can you
Takes
go
you back
to
towards the
I5?
guy.
Can we go here?
I say no. 'Cause it brings you. Well, no, actually, it doesn't bring any closer to J6, does it? So
Right.
Sure.
Right. We can go back to I5. Say, screw that. Right. Because we're not getting close to this guy. If this were the situation and he broke us, right? Well, that would change the situation because then J5 would be the closest. But let's say we had 2 guys here. If that were the situation, we'd go here. Now we could not go back to I5 because it would be getting closer back to I7. So, but we're not getting back any closer back to this guy. We're maintaining our distance. So this, and this are destinations that we can go to. The choice is yours at that point. Wherever you want to go, it's fine. Well, it might be fine, but you'd have to evaluate which one would give you the biggest benefit. None of those are rally terrain, so you don't have to do anything about that. Okay?
J3 is a TEM at least, though.
Right. But what's the biggest thing that we want with our? What's the biggest concern with this particular unit? Biggest concern that we have.
Staying away from
The giant white marker on it, right?
Yeah.
Once this is gone, a 7 rally sim. If well, actually a 6 would rally him because it's self rally, right? A 6, or if we're here, it's going to be a 6 anyway, right? And if this puts us within proximity of a unit over here versus a unit right here, we lose our DM. He just pops us again, DMs and skin.
Yeah.
This is the in my opinion, one of the highest priorities to get rid of that DM and keep it off so you can potentially rally this unit. Now, if you've got a whole bunch of other units that you know you're not going to rally this guy for a while, yeah, maybe move him here. Why would you want to move a guy here instead of moving him over here? If this were the situation over here. Why would you want to end up here? And it's the American's turn next turn. And you lose your DM. Say, oh. And you say, whoo, so glad that DM's gone. And you say it out loud to your opponent. What might he do?
You move over there.
What might he do? His prep fire phase, American prep fire phase turn 3. What might this unit do?
Shoot at you.
Shoot at you. That's what you want. If he's shooting, what's he not doing?
Advancing to the victory condition.
Advancing the victory conditions over here, not over here.
Right.
Who can deal with this unit without being shot at? If you were the American, and this bazooka, let's say this bazooka's lying on the ground with Uncle Buck, right? Say he wants to retain this. So the American's movement phase comes. What's Uncle Buck going to do? If he's worried about you rallying this unit being behind him, what's Uncle Buck going to do?
Just move adjacent on your way to somewhere else.
Right. Let's say he picks up he finds the bazooka. Hopefully I won't. Jesus, where's my dice roller? Whatever. He finds the bazooka with a 1, picks it up. Right, 1 movement factor, or he could do that in the rally phase for all intents and purposes. He goes, hell, he could technically bypass this location. Now he's in line of sight of this unit, and he's adjacent to him. 2, 3, bypass 4-5, and then advance over here if that's where he wanted to be anyway. He's in an adjacent location at that bypass vertex, and he can see him. If we bypass K4 along this hex side only, he is an adjacent location, but he is not within line of sight. So that would not DM the unit. You have to bypass up that. Technically, I think, yeah, you could bypass over. You can bypass there and then into this location. You got to see him, got to be adjacent. 1, which is where you might be going anyway, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. That will DM him and put him in, less of a problem. He may or may not route. Hell, he could route back into the woods for all that matters. But he's still going to be DM'd during the Germans' rally phase, which is the most important thing. Most likely, he's not going to be up. If he is, he rolled a 3. Nothing. Yep.
Dude, this is the best bypass location I've seen in all the maps, I think.
This one here?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a squeaky one.
Space there.
Yeah, it's pretty squeaky. Yeah, it's crazy. That's a crazy one there. So I'll go. That's it. All right. MSU Navy grad, you had a question about routing before after we finish that one?
Yeah, say we swapped out a mortar for the 88, and the mortar using its area fire up in the G3, G1 area. Would that interdict?
Yeah. If he's on the same level. If he's on the same level. So if this was a mortar, and he went to G2, and the American broken unit went to G2, and that's within range of that mortar, let's say if it was a support weapon mortar, most support weapon mortars have, Germans probably got one of the shorter ranges, 13. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's probably 13 right there. Within normal range of support weapon, just like a machine gun, right? So within normal range, and there's no covered arc for that German support weapon mortar. So again, a great weapon to have. Don't leave your mortars behind because they can interdict out the 13 hexes. They can interdict out the 13 hexes. Pretty damn good. Pretty damn good.
Well, thanks for all the discussion on the routing. That helps me out a bit.
Yeah, it's huge. And again,
Appreciate
it's not a guy right here. Like I say, it's not quite so obvious. Where are we going? This would probably be the last spot that most players, even ASLers, would think to go. Oh, I'm going here. 2-6 because I'm going away from this guy. Let's see, this guy's wasn't here. Or yeah. I'm telling you, 70% of your players are going right there. You watch any game randomly, he's routing there, especially if he's got a leader. I will guarantee it. If he has a leader right here, there's a 90% chance that unit's routing there. 90% chance. There's about a 5% chance that he'll go here. I'm not kidding. That's why I take routing seriously, because it seriously impacts the game. I mean, a potential route here gets this guy up and going. This guy is nowhere near that destination now. He's got to go 4 CX to get there. This is a pain in the ass to get that guy over there. Moving him over here. What's the problem here? Hey, you got a damn cliff behind you now. You can't go down and up. You're not doing this any day of the week. You're stuck in the gully if you want to get out of the fight. Then this Sergeant Putz has got to get his ass in that gully. Out of the fight. Time. What's the easiest thing to do? Put him right next to the leader. Salt move the leader up. Do whatever you need to do. He's going to be rallied in another full game turn. 100%, well, not 100% of the time, but there's a good chance he's going to be rallied, especially if the Americans are heading this way. Does that change the game if you have another squad, especially if you only started with 5?
Sure.
You damn well better believe it does. But if he's over here, stuck in a crag, broken, that a hero can DM, or that this leader here can go up, DM him again, and then get his ass over here in one turn. This guy's got to go 1, this American, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then advance. It takes him a while to get there, and possibly at risk. Depends on how the situation goes. He has to actually actively do that. Maybe he had different plans for Putz. Maybe Putz was going to move over here and cut a path from this American. Don't know. This changes the entire complexion of this guy's game. And yeah, go ahead.
the route rules. How are the route rules in starter kit different than the route rules in regular ASL?
The only real difference that you'll see on a playing standard all the time is when you're adjacent to units.
With the surrender prisoners.
With the surrender prisoners, essentially starter kit, everyone's stuff is in no quarter status, which means you have to route away from adjacent units. There is no surrender in there. Whereas, like right here, this unit here in starter kit, let's say people mistook this for the destination. Let's say they went 2-4, right? Or let's say this was the only destination. They would go, some guys would low crawl. If they low crawled, no go. 2, 3, 4, 6. You'll see it a lot if they want to take interdiction. Most guys will never take interdiction in starter kit. They just don't. I just don't see it. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Because you're being interdicted within your route path, and you started the turn adjacent, you would surrender. So you would have, instead, you would route to this unit instead, and this guy would be off the map. And how does this change the game in this specific scenario?
But you get more victory points from taking the prisoners with you.
Exit VP. This guy just went from 2 VP to 6 VP. How many do you need off in this game? 7. You need this one squad with its prisoners and Lieutenant Buck, Uncle Buck right here. These guys win the game for you.
I thought prisoners were only worth, like a full prisoner was only worth 2. You're saying they're worth 4?
Well, they're 2 upon capture. So if there's casualty or victory points during the game, and it says, avoid 20, 15 casualty points, in game turns, this unit is, quote, eliminated until he's freed again. So you would gain 2 victory points immediately upon capture. And then at the end of the game, if this guy exited, you would gain 2 more points. Well, at the end of the
Zon doesn't have any capture, any CVP just to exit one. So okay, so in this particular scenario, though, he'd only be worth 2 for the prisoners and 2 for the squad.
You get the exit. Look at exit VP. It talks about exit VP or just a VP that you have to exit off the board. If this unit stayed on board, right, the prisoner would be worth nothing. Right. Because you didn't exit him. Once you exit the prisoners, that's a condition of counting those prisoners as victory points. He would be then worth 2 because you still have him, and then 2 because he's doubled at the end of the game. And after you exit, that's the end of the game. Well, once you get him off there. And again, knowing your victory point definitions and how to apply them is also important in this game.
Okay.
Now, if the Germans blast the living shit out of this guy and the prisoners get killed, does that penalize the Germans in this game?
I don't think so, because there's no CVP in this game, in this scenario.
Well, there are CVP, but we're talking about exit VP. There's no prisoners to exit because you blew the shit out of them. Now, when this guy goes off the board, does he have prisoners with him? Nope. He's only 2. So it would behoove the German to kill his own men, which is kind of odd. But in a regular game,
read A26.23 last sentence. Captured enemy units exited according to the victory conditions count as normal victory points during play and double exit VP at scenario end.
Right. So, and that might also be in the prisoner section. So, during a game, let's say it's a casualty victory point game, right? Right? We talk about casualty victory points, and there's no exit VP. Now, if the Germans kill this unit, and this unit gets killed, then the American would be awarded those points because the Germans caused the death of that unit. You can't slaughter your units to help the Americans not get those points. But in this case, since they only count if they're exit, right? All the Germans can die in the game. All the Germans can be completely destroyed. If the Americans don't get off, they lose. Simple as that. The victory points are not to kill all the German units. The victory points are get the hell off. However well you can. This affords the American essentially one squad and one leader, because you're probably going to team up with this guy. Work your way this way. This is a big problem for the Germans. Especially if you're right here. Well, I don't know, 88 point blank's pretty nasty. But, you know, this is something you have to worry about. So, because this is 8 points because the leader's worth 2 minus 1 HVP to get off. Changes the complexion. Remember, read and understand. Makes a big difference in how you play the game. Whether I want to put my units in spots where I can't route away. Is it better to be here and stop all the Americans from, getting across? Or maybe I need to cede that territory because if he destroys me there, if I'm here, all right, if I'm here and I want to stop the Americans, even if it's a 4-4-7, 7-0, whatever you want to do I want to defend there or do I want to defend across the street? They say, hey, Stu, you got point blank shots, the 4 modifiers plus 1. You're a shitty little half squad. Yeah? Again, gentlemen, if I'm here, what's my primary concern? Where am I going to route to? Where am I routing? If I break here in ASL and SK, he roll calls to L6. This is the difference between SK and ASL. And this is why when people compare, say, oh, SK is the same thing as ASL, they haven't played SK. They have no clue what they're talking about. If this unit breaks and no quarter is not in play, the Americans have not invoked no quarter, what happens to these units in ASL?
Surrender.
They surrender. They're gone. SK, they get to go here, fight another day, maybe. Low crawl for free. Can't do that in ASL. You're gone. You surrender. Now, at that point, he may say, I'm not going to take any prisoners. It's up to the Americans to decide that. Whether he's going to be burdened by them. Maybe he needs to do something else. I don't know. Whatever the case may be, these units will surrender. And that's 1 point per. That's another 4 victory points. Again, you go from 3 victory points and the 88's ignoring you to capturing these units and going to 7 victory points. And now the Germans have to face you. Does that make a difference in how the game is conducted? Absolutely. Yeah. It changes the entire complexion of the game. It just does.
Close assault. What was that last rule number you just said?
26.222, I think.
Yeah, it's under VC. Read that section like every day of your life. I always go to the any this scenario. When I read the victory conditions in here. What did I do? I went and read the entire victory conditions section again.
Okay, 20. In terms of how to calculate and how to apply casualty VP or 26.22 to 26.23 handle everything. They in terms of the actual working it out for the process, in terms of when you work it out, at what point during the game or at the end of the game, what the value of units are in terms of.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. I tell you now, the first thing you do once you know the scenario, the first thing before you even start the game, before you've even done your setup, have a chat with your opponent and make sure you both understand the victory conditions.
It's a good idea.
How to calculate them, because trust me, even now after 30 odd years, I still go to the rule book to make sure I'm calculating the casualty victory points for vehicles. I mean, I know it off by heart.
Yep.
But I don't I'm not going to trust my memory in a game.
All right. And why is that, guys? Because you're playing a game like this. It's confusing at many times. It's involved for 3 to 4 hours. And the only thing you have to remember is victory points at the end of the game. It's like you're not thinking victory points technically every single part of the game. But if you, again, especially like I did on the Price of Impatience, what I did on the Price of Impatience, well, I need to get 40 points off, right? Well, if you look at my sheet here, well, you can't see it. I marked the VP of every single hex of every single unit, what they're worth. And then you add it up so you know what you can't afford to lose, what you can afford to lose. And if you lose that, where you have to make it up. And then just go over your opponent as well and say, hey, how many victory points did you get from me on the game? Because that's going to affect his game decisions. Let's say he thought you only had 40 victory points. You need to get everybody off. Well, and then he shoots like a truck and he goes, ha, ha, ha. And he just like hides from you the rest of the game. And you say, what the hell is this guy doing? And you just cruise right off the board and you just win. You know, no one wants to waste 2 hours because somebody misinterpreted the victory conditions. And that's the entire point of the game is both of you guys are fighting for those same victory conditions. They have to be understood. The SSR have to be understood before they come up during the game. Because you're going to make your decisions based upon those SSR, and having a conflict in the middle of a heated game where someone just rolled a snakes is not going to make a very conducive, friendly discussion many times, especially if it's in a tournament.
This is an etiquette thing as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's actually in your own interest to make sure that both of you understand the rules. It's going to make for a much smoother playing experience, much more enjoyable. Secondly, the victory conditions. That's the end game, right?
Yep.
That's the whole process. If you keep reminding yourself, and no one is going to complain about you saying, "Look, I just have to check the victory conditions again during a game." No, because that's how you maintain focus.
Right.
ASL is a mentally taxing, but also an endurance test.
Yep.
Mentally.
And it's very rewarding. That's it's like, why do people play? I mean, this game right here, what did we discuss today? We discussed pretty much just routing, right? And look at the intricacies of routing that we covered in both examples. You know,
just from that simple question Mark asked.
Yeah, just simple things. And I love talking about routing. You guys, you just got you got me on that one. But again, where Pete's coming from, it's etiquette. Let's say you didn't know that prisoners were doubled. You would probably learn that in discussion with your opponent pre-game, or maybe you both agreed that they didn't count double. At least you're playing by the same rules. Are you playing correctly by the rules? No, but at least both of you understand that the prisoners don't count, and so therefore you're both playing the same game, albeit you leave a couple little rules out. That's going to happen. That's not the problem here. The problem is Pete knows he's going to get victory points off, and I know he's not. It's like, why the hell is he moving those guys off? Those guys are dead. I don't really care about those guys. Why is he taking 30,000 prisoners? Ha ha ha. I'll just get the 10-2 over here and kill him. And he walks off the board. And then I got egg on my face. What it does is it avoids the post-game sour taste. I saw a very experienced player at a tournament. Again, you're busy doing stuff. Win the game by capturing multi-hex buildings within 3 hexes of P5. Okay? In Vassal, we mark them. Right, gentlemen? In Vassal, we mark them. If you're playing face-to-face, some people don't mark them. Some people mark them with little markers or chits or whatever. Some people don't mark them at all. If you don't mark them at all, again, like Pete says, revisit. Make sure you know what the hell you're going after every single turn. Pre-game. Which buildings are we talking about, Pete? M4, S5, whatever. Make sure everybody knows what you're talking about. One guy, he said, capture 7 building hexes within like 6 hexes of whatever. Well, about a third of his pressure was to a building hex that wasn't in the VC area. So his opponent just kind of like let him take it. He sat there 1 or 2 turns in a tournament style scenario, which is going to be short. And if he sits there 1 or 2 turns, now he doesn't have those 2 turns where he could have actually taken the VP. It cost him the game simply because he misinterpreted where he needed to go. It simply cost him the game. And that happens easily, gentlemen.
Yeah. Victory conditions, and it's the same with setup. You should both have a clear, neutral understanding of the setup areas and the setup rules.
All right. And this one here, Zong with the win. What are there any setup restrictions, gentlemen, for those who have played it?
Yes.
Okay, what are those restrictions?
Well, Mark did a great job building the scenario, and you could see the red dotted line. That's where the Germans have to set up to the
Yeah, nice job, Mark.
South.
yeah,
South of that.
south of that line.
Okay. Is that it?
Wasn't sure where north was. Yep.
Is that the only thing the German has to be worried about, or the American?
Well, the your 88s, they can set up hip as long as you set up in like woods or something. So that's a consideration, I guess.
Right. If you don't bother with SSR2, and let's say I've got this guy over here, and I put him right here, and he's hip. You think that's going to cause problems during the game?
Yep.
People lose games all the time in tournaments because they do shit like this. This is not beginning ASL players. These guys have been playing 15, 20, 30 years. They'll do this because they won't look at scenario special rule 2. And when he says, okay, your guys are moving the open right here. You got like 55 units. Okay, boom. Oh, god dang it. Now, where are the hips? Boom. Okay, I'm going to fire. The guy says, oh, you're full of shit. You can't be there. And then you start crying and complaining, and everyone starts arguing, and then you get the tournament director over. He says, yeah, it's an illegally set up gun. Bye-bye. Gone.
Oh, you just eliminated, huh?
Yep, illegally set up. And just remove it from the game. That's an average, a typical, common rule in tournaments. Illegally set up guns, removed.
Yeah, it's not just a tournament rule. It's
Right.
actually, if you've illegally set up something, it's eliminated.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, absolutely. You can't put all vehicles in buildings. Only certain vehicles can be set up in buildings.
How you handle that situation determines whether it leaves a nasty taste in the mouth.
Correct.
Generally, I find that there's no point in offering an alternative unless the gun, like, if it's an 88, he's not going to be able to manhandle the gun, right? So it may as well, and he's got the benefit. He can't put it anywhere else because he's got the benefit of seeing the line of attack of the Americans now. So
Right.
anywhere else, he's getting the benefit of hindsight.
Right. Oh, in that case, I'll put it over here, and there's a whole bunch of Americans over here, stuck.
That changes. So the easiest way, and everyone accepts generally, it's just the way you don't say, you lost your gun. Yeah, well, then you're a jerk.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, it's a, but stuff like that happens.
Happens all the time.
It happens to every. I've known really good players, guys who've won ASLOT, who've forgotten to bring on their reinforcements the whole game.
The goners.
What's scary is that they've won, but they've or they thought they'd deployed. They thought they'd deployed all. They'd taken off some squads.
Oh yeah.
Their OB to deploy them, right? So they placed the half squads on, but they actually had taken. They thought they actually hadn't removed the original squad, so they took the extra squads off as well.
I do that all the time.
Yeah.
I hate deploying because I know I'm going to screw it up somehow because I want to tell you I've deployed half my guys or whatever the case may be. You just got to you really got to, bean count what you're doing because your opponent can't.
And there's no shame in going through at the beginning of the phase before the game started and saying, I just want to double check that I have the correct number of squads.
Right.
Or units on board.
General question.
Yep.
Yeah.
88s. I've moved guns before, so you have to roll a 4 to move this, but wire the number and there's a red circle.
Large.
Can you set this 88 up in the building?
Yes.
Why can't you set that 80 up in the building?
Well, I guess you can't. I've never. I just put it in the woods, or I thought I could put it in the building. Honestly, I thought I could.
Right.
That's a large. It's large. Yeah. If it's If it's a white dot, then I think it's small, and if it's nothing, it's regular, and if it's a
The
red,
red, like large, like
It
tank.
depends on the
It's
type
got to
of
be
gun it is.
got to be a QSU gun too.
Right. Yeah, it all and depends on the gun. Yeah, absolutely. Look for gun setup. I don't know exactly what rule. You know what rule that is, Pete?
Yeah, thanks.
I don't know what the rule is. Again,
I'm just
I've been playing for. I don't know what the damn rule is. I just got to go find it somewhere.
It's under
Gun setup. Anytime you have guns in your game, and there's no special rule like there is in Zon with the Wind, you got to know what size it is. You got to know what type of gun it is, and then therefore, boom.
Here it is. C 2.7 prohibited hexes. A gun cannot occupy an upper building level, nor can it occupy a water obstacle, crags, except for mortars, marsh, or irrigated paddy, unless dismantled and possessed or in or on a vehicle or boat. Small target sized guns and any anti-tank or infantry guns that are not large targets. So any gun that is small and anti-tank infantry guns that are normal or small are the only 5/8 inch non-vehicular gun counters that may ever occupy a building or rubble hex.
Okay, because I know I've set up guns in buildings before. I just didn't understand why this one. Thanks.
So some of the Russian 76 mil guns are artillery. They're not anti-tank.
Right.
And so they're large, so they can't actually, or they're not small, so they don't actually meet the definition of anti-tank or infantry guns.
You guys see these guns right here? That's on the map.
Yeah.
Right. They pretty much look like the same gun. Can any of these guns be set up in N7 in a building hex?
Only the third
right
one.
hand side.
Yep.
Only the most right.
Right.
Because it's not an AT or an infantry gun, it has to be small. These may not be in there. These are legally set up. This one's fine.
Unless they're on a rooftop location.
Yeah, that's rare. I kind of avoid those just because of that rule. That's usually like your campaign game things.
That's usually where your AA guns are located.
Right. Exactly. Now, I think SK still has that rule. It's just kind of like most of the guns in SK are typically small or AT guns and stuff like that. So most of those guns by default are already sort of like classifying as you being able to set up in there. Check the scenarios and you'll be surprised. Say, oh, okay, now it makes sense. A lot of what the guys have done when this is why I really like the SK scenarios, and simply because they've designed the game so you don't screw up. You know, there's a problem with that, and the same thing that I have with the routing rules. I said the routing is the biggest thing that SK players going into ASL is going to have a problem with, because they know they could route from this location to L6 like I described before. At ASL, you're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to do it under certain conditions. Same thing with the guns here. You've got giant 88s. They have some 88s that are normal sized, right? Not small, not large, normal sized. The size matters. Size matters. Again, it's one of those little things. It's okay to make those errors early on. But again, that's just part of, okay, I had fun playing this game. Is there somewhere else I can put the guns? Or if you do pre-game setup, if you guys have time before then, look at your big. This one is pretty simple, right? I mean, because you can't put trenches in buildings, and I'm thinking that's probably why it said you have to set up unlimited. To say why bother in trenches? Because if you set up hip, you can set up in place. So what's the problem? Well, because you have to set up in trenches, it precludes you from putting it in this building. Gotcha. Because the trench can't be in the building and the gun has to be in the trench. So that's the reason, in my opinion, why they say you got to set up in trenches and in woods if you want hip. So you could set up in open ground. You could set up here, but can you set up hip? Nope. Because you're not within the scenario special rule. The scenario special rule says may use hip only in a woods hex. That is not a woods hex. So you could set up here, but he's going to see you before he enters the game. That is an
Hey,
option.
Stu, thanks for going through all my examples. Real sorry, seemed like I monopolized.
No. This is what it's all about. Like again, because we're going into ASL, a lot of the SK players aren't used to these subsidiary rules, which you haven't been used to. Gullies. I mean, how many elevations have we got? We got 1, 2, 3 elevations on this map. It doesn't happen in SK anywhere. It just doesn't. So lines of sight rules come into play, right?
When this,
When I
when
looked at
this,
the map, I wasn't sure if it was up or down.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I've learned that on this one also.
You got cliffs, you got crags, you've got ponds, you know, and you got paths. We got paths in the other one too. You have multi-story buildings.
This is one of my most hated maps.
I love this map. I love this map. Well, I just love it because it's just the confusion it says. This building in and of itself is described in a certain rule section.
Oh God, yeah.
This one's a tricky one, but once you see it, you've got it. You got it down, baby. Once you see it, you got it down.
In fact, if you've got any of the boards 13 through 18, 8, 12, 13, 14, 15, there will be a very similar building because that first appeared in GI.
Right. Yeah, oh yeah, split level. They're called split level buildings. Movements, very different. Units on essentially the second level U4 are not on the same level as units on the second level in V3. Check those sections out. Buildings like this come into play. Again, this is just where you just kind of read the rule book on your side time, or if you know the scenario you're playing up, whip the boards out and say, "Oh, what the hell is this? You know, that looks kind of weird. I haven't played with that building." It's gonna have a description in the rules. It's in the rules. Or ask somebody, say, "Hey, what does this happen when the building's on 2 different levels like that?" You know.
In fact, the rule, if you actually look at the rule, it's actually really good because it's got an illustration
Yep.
of the building.
Yep.
And it actually clarifies it makes it very easy to visualize.
Yeah, it's very good, very good. But there's again, other than just the rules, other than just the bypassing, the setting up and hip and concealment and this, that, and the other, just the terrain itself changes. You know, you got a cliff over here, you got a cliff over here. Is there a difference between the two? Pond. You know, if I had, you know, just for a quick instance, and then, you know, whatever, look up ponds. And I won't even answer this question. I'll let you guys look it up. These guys down here want to fire on that unit there. 747-337. Fire group 228. You tell me next time if that's legal or not, and how much firepower that would be. Okay, in this specific situation, on this map.
Research it. I've got to hit the hay though, so just wanted to say thanks again, Stu, Pete, everybody. And,
yeah.
Appreciate you guys using my example. So
see you later.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Yep. Good. Yeah. Rod examples are also always good, but yeah, that's your homework for next week. Let me know what you guys think of that situation there.
Think about that.
Yeah, and it makes a difference. It makes a difference. So yeah, again, like I there's a lot of terrain going on this particular board. A lot of scenarios say no valley, just eliminate the valley, and in Valzo we could do that quite easily. So it's not a big deal. But
the worst scenario on this board I've ever seen is the one that made that valley the hill.
Oh, yeah, that's rough. Yeah, that's really rough. But
the only way to do that is to do it in Vasil and print it out.
Yeah. Yeah, that would yeah, that change. That's your perspective changes a lot.
The crest lines are completely different.
Yeah, it screws it up. It inverts your thoughts.
Well, the crest lines can't be. The crest lines are actually so weird because they're the complete opposite of what's written in the rules.
Yeah, like this spot over here is a real bitch to deal with, because that's technically these are not hill hexes. So what is this? Yeah. You know, that's really not defined.
Yep.
Really not defined. But
yeah, you never play a scenario that turns the valley into a hill.
No.
Just ignore that scenario. Find another scenario.
Or just agree with what the LOSs are with your opponent. You're pretty much playtesting. Well, not necessarily playtesting it, but it's not going to be your normal visually perspective.
think there are
scenario.
2 scenarios that have done that, and they've got almost no play for that reason.
Yeah, it's just too difficult. So, do we have any other questions, gentlemen? For those guys that are remaining, any other pointers? Any things we missed? Anything we screwed up? Mark? No?
Nope. I mean, I did have a question, but I'll save it for SK next week.
Okay, that'll work. Yeah.
Let's hear it now.
No. It takes too long. It'll take too long. I want to do a rules dive and something in SK, so
Okay.
we'll save it for next week.
Oh, excellent. All right, we'll hit that first thing up, Mark. Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
Right out the gate, and then we'll cover the 2 SK scenarios with the N463. Maybe we'll get another playing if someone hasn't played that yet. Try to win as the Germans, and that way we at least have a German win.
All right. I'll accept the challenge. I've won as the Germans.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. Do you have that log?
Yeah, I think I do.
Excellent. Just submit it.
Right,
Just
I'll
post it.
if I can, but otherwise I'll try. I'll be actually around a lot this weekend. I'll see if I can.
Yeah, just post another thing, and then we'll have that. And we'll have a take a look at that. That's important because I was noticed some players getting frustrated in this game, and the 2 submissions in N463, pretty much it got it's pretty much like when you don't miss a lot, things have a tendency to die, which we
S50, right?
S50.
Yeah.
And that way we'll have a German win on that. I was hoping to get a play for that under my belt, but I didn't have the opportunity to, so that's no big deal. But it has some interesting things to look about. That's more of a game of again, tearing apart your OB, knowing what your OB covered. I've covered it a couple times already in general conversation, but at least we'll get into it. And just like the routing shows here, you have different perspectives on what you're looking at. And sometimes you might just need that other person's perspective to help possibly make that scenario a little more clear. It may not change your opinion on what you want to do, but it might give you more options. And the more options we have, the better decisions we can make. And that's just all there is to it. And oh yeah, we didn't even get into crest. The replay shows some crest as well. So it's another terrain feature that new players will start to will struggle with. So the victory conditions very similar, like 88's at Zon. I mean, this is the game that 88's at Zon was mirrored in, but now we're layering on different terrain types, slightly different routing rules in terms of surrendering, and that can make a difference. And prisoners adding into the game. So although it looks very simple, looks very similar, if anything, we got the bypass and the snipers, which the games I've seen, the snipers actually came into play and made a little bit of difference, and even though they're 2s, they everyone, it's easy to activate those things if you're rolling hot. So, but all right, yeah, but definitely bring them. We'll hit that next week. N463. If you guys want to get a play in to get some more replays up here, so we can have some other examples we can go through on how to approach that scenario, that would be great. And yeah, that'd be a great thing. So it looks like an interesting scenario, kind of tough, but I think there's a couple weird things that go in that scenario that may not be apparent from the get-go or the third time looking at it. It's kind of one of those weird ones. But that's all I got for you tonight, gentlemen. I don't want to extend your time anymore. I know it's late for most of you guys. So, but we'll call it there, and we shall see you next week with Mark's question. We'll hit it straight off.
Okay, sounds good.
Take care, gentlemen. Thank you for
Thanks,
coming
guys,
up.
folks.
Thank you.
Great discussion as always.
Yep. Good night.